So in Isaiah 5, we just got done with Isaiah 1 where we talked about a father who's calling his children together who are running away. They're rebellious, and he's heartbroken. Isaiah chapter 5 has the same kind of flavor to it, but he's singing a song. So if you look in Isaiah 5, 1 through 6 is a song. It begins in verse 1, I will sing for the one I love a song about his vineyard. And so from the middle of verse 1 to 6, you have a song in the original Hebrew that was meant to be sung. Pastor Chris and I tried to put together a song. We kind of did. We wanted to make a really sad song. And we just said, yeah, I don't know why we didn't sing it. Why didn't we sing it? No, you don't want to sing. No, we're not singing it. We're not singing it, Darcy. We're not singing it. So I said I'll just kind of talk about sad songs for a little bit, because some of us love, I just want to see, raise your hand if you love sad songs. There's some people that really, like I'd say a third of people love sad songs. I'd say deep down, all of us have our sad songs that we go to once in a while. I did some study on why do people like sad songs, and really 3 reasons. One is memories. Sad songs have an ability to bring you back to places that you remember. I jotted down a couple. Every time I hear raindrops keep falling on my head, it reminds me of my dad in the garage fixing the car, and I'll have the lawnmower. I don't know why. It always reminds me of that. When I hear the song Daniel by Elton John, it reminds me of my brother Donald, who went to Tennessee, and I didn't see him, and I said, Donald is traveling to Tennessee. I can remember singing that. But I'll tell you the song that gets me every time. It goes like this. It says, oh, my bags are packed. I'm ready to go. I'm standing here outside your door. Already I'm so lonesome I could cry. Do you guys know that song? So kiss me and smile for me. What's the title of the song? Leaving on a Jet Plane. Oh, I hate that song. Hate it. Utterly hate that song. So, but the first reason we sing sad songs is remember, it brings you back to, some people say better days or sadder days, but you remember. Second reason people like sad songs is because it calms you. Actually, there's a chemical that is released through crying in sad songs. It's called the prolactin hormone, and it's associated with release of stress. Kind of lets it go. And sad songs have a way of tapping into that. And I'd say the third reason is the group The Verb said it best. They said, when it comes to sad songs, it helps me to hear sounds that recognize the pain in me. Sad songs they have an ability to bring out the pain that's deep in me and releases them. In this Isaiah 5 is the pain of a heartbroken father. It's not really, it's going to sound like he is dressing down the people and, how dare you? No, it's not that. It's like, oh, what you're doing to me. It's killing me. Let's read it. It's Isaiah 5, starting in the middle of verse 1. The song goes, my loved one had a vineyard on fertile hillside. He dug it up and cleared it of stones and planted it with the choicest vines. He built a watchtower in it and cut out a winepress as well. Then he looked for a crop of good grapes, but it only yielded bad fruit or sour grapes. Now, you dwellers in Jerusalem and people of Judah, judge between me and my vineyard. What more could have been done for my vineyard than I have done for it? When I looked for good grapes, why did it yield only bad? Now I will tell you what I'm going to do to my vineyard. I will take away its hedge. It will be destroyed. I'll break down its wall. It will be trampled. I'll make it a wasteland, neither pruned or cultivated, and briars and thorns will grow there. I will command the clouds not to rain on it. So this is a dirge, a minor keyed, slow ballad. And the objective is to express the heartbreak of God towards his people. It has actually been said that the book of Isaiah is crafted a lot like the Bible. It's the Bible in microcosm. The Bible has 66 chapters. 39 in the Old Testament, which focus on judgment. 27 in the New Testament, which focus on the Savior who has brought hope and judgment. Isaiah has 66 chapters. The first 39 highlight Judah and Israel's condemnation. The last 27 about hope and comfort. Both messages are about redemption through a man of sorrows, a child who's born, a son who is given. And both of them both start off sad. That's the way redemption always begins. You're not going to be needing redemption if you're okay. You're not going to be needing deliverance, which is salvation, if you're doing well. So bad news is always communicated first. And in this case, the bad news is the sorrow of a father's shattered dreams. I had children. I had hopes for them. I gave them a great place to live. And all I got is sour grapes. And that's really the story of all of our lives to some degree. That's why we need salvation. And so you could say it like this. It's bad news, but the bad news needs to be heard. It needs to be expressed. And like a sad song, it needs to touch the heart if you're ever going to want the good news. Because the good news won't seem good if you never acknowledge the badness of the bad. And so we're going to dwell on a song. And the song's about the vineyard on a hill. It's a very simple song. Basically starts off with a man who wanted to plant a beautiful crop of grapes. And he found this hill that had fertile land. So he tilled it. And in Israel, when you till land, it's very rocky soil, and all the rocks he brought out, he built a wall, built it up, and then built a watchtower so he could stand in it and make sure nobody would come to invade or animals would come to trample. Then he made a wine press where you take those good grapes and stomp on them, and out comes the juice where you can ferment it and make wonderfully rich wine. But the sad part is, after he worked, sweat, blood, and tears, and planted a great crop of grapes, all he got is bitter fruit. In the Hebrew, sour grapes. So the question in verse 4, what should I do? Because what more could be done? In verse 5 and 6 is, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to knock down the walls, I'm going to tear down the watchtower, and I'm just going to let all the wild animals, beasts, and people trample it down. And I'm even going to pray that it doesn't rain. It's a sad song. The question is, what is the song about? Verse 7 gives you the answer. Verse 7, this song is about Israel. This song is about Judah in particular. And this song is about how they rebelled against Jehovah God. So last week we said interpretive measures, level 1 is historical. Well, this is level 1. Verse 7 says, the vineyard of the Lord Almighty is the nation of Israel. The people of Judah are the vines he delighted in, and he looked for justice, but saw bloodshed, for righteousness, but heard cities, cries of distress. So he looked for good fruit, justice, righteousness, but all he got is sour. And so what he's going to do, this is more or less a prophecy about the coming nations that are going to trample Israel, which is Assyria. They're going to go into northern kingdom Israel and take them captive for 70 years. And then Babylon is going to come to Judah and Jerusalem, ransack it and take them captive. So this is a historical prophecy. But remember, we said it's not just about history, it's also general. And if you read this closer, this is about us too. Because like Israel, he planted you on the earth. He gave you everything you need to grow good grapes. And if he comes and he finds bad grapes, why should he treat you any different than he did his own people? Go to the book of Romans, chapter 11. I want you to look at verses 19 to 22. We're going to go right back to Isaiah 5 in a second, but I want you to go to Romans, right after Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Acts, and in Romans 11. In Romans 11 is he's going to talk about the nation Israel. And so you have two groups of people in the New Testament. You have the Jewish people, the nation Israel, and then you got the Gentiles. Those are people that are saved by faith alone, who are not Jews. And he's writing about the Gentiles. And the Gentiles are getting a little arrogant because God poured his grace on the Gentiles and they started believing by faith. And he kind of cast aside the Jews for a while because they rejected him. So starting in verse 19, here's what he says. He says, though they were broken off, meaning Israel was broken off the main vine, they were branches that were on the vine, but they were broken off. Why? Because of unbelief. And now you've been grafted into the vine by faith. But look what he says. But don't be arrogant about it, but rather tremble. Your position with God is not something to take lightly. Don't assume on it or presume about it. Why? Because of verse 20 or verse 21. If God did not spare the natural branches, meaning he didn't spare the people of Israel. If he didn't spare the people of Israel, do you think he's going to spare you when you start behaving like they did? No, that's the point. Look at verse 21. Or verse 22. Consider, therefore, the kindness and sternness of God. Sternness to those who fell, but kindness to you, provided that you continue in his kindness. So what he's saying is he's saying, be very careful. If they didn't escape punishment, and you start doing the things they did, do you think you're going to escape punishment? Well, what did they do? That's where Isaiah 5 picks up. We are going to talk about the 6 woes, 6 behavioral patterns that Israel were practicing that got them kicked out or ripped off the vine. And they're woes because they're things that break the heart of God. Actions that cause sorrow, that cause God to be distressed and want to act. Tear down the hedges and let people just add them. So, what we need to do is we need to read these verses with ears that hear and eyes that see, and we need to ask the question, if Israel didn't escape because they did those things, are we doing those things as a person and as a people, as a nation? We're going to test fruit. That's what we're here for. And we're going to look at 6 woes. So are you ready? Are you ready? Strap on, because I got to tell you, I didn't like reading this, to be honest with you. The first woe is found in verse 8. And listen to what it says. Woe to you. So he's saying, instead of blessed are those who, he's saying cursed. Cursed are those who add house to house and join field to field till no space is left, and you live alone in the land. The Lord Almighty has declared in my hearing, surely the great houses will become desolate, the fine mansions left without occupants. So the first woe, what he's describing is a heart of greed, adding house to house. Accumulating more and more, building bigger and bigger barns while pushing out smaller farmers and not caring for the poorer people around you. It's the rich landowner, as J. Vernon McGee, who says they are squeezing out the little man so they can have what they want and be left alone. 1970s, there's a guy named Francis Shaver. He was a Christian philosopher. He said the 2 big sins of America are affluence and indifference. Affluence, I have enough, and I want more, so I can be left alone. That's the 70s. And so what Isaiah is saying here is be careful, be careful. If you go to Jeremiah 22, he gives a little bit more detail on the hearts of the greedy. It sounds kind of similar, I'd say, to America. Jeremiah 22, 13 to 17. Look at what he says. Verse 13. Woe to him, or to the person who builds his palace. No longer building a house, he's building a palace. What's a palace? Something with bigger space, more rooms, much more luxury. Woe to him who builds his palace by unrighteousness, his upper rooms by injustice, meaning he's kind of cheating the system to get more money, making his own people work for nothing, not paying them for their labor, getting rich off the back of his servants. Verse 16, he says, I will build myself a great palace with spacious upper rooms. So he makes large double-paned Anderson windows in it, panels with cedar, and decorates it in Sherwin-Williams red paint. Does it make you a king to have more and more cedar? Meaning, does it make you a better person of status because you have more than the other guy? Well, your parents didn't think so. That's what he says here. Did not your father have food and drink? Like, he didn't worry about the palace. He was fine. God took care of him. He did what was just and right, so all went well with him. He defended the cause of the poor and needy, so all went well. Is that not what it means to know me? Like, he's basically saying, is to know me getting rich? Is that what a blessing from God is? Or being in harmony with the people you love, and God takes care of you. But, verse 17, your eyes and your heart are set on dishonest gain, on shedding innocent blood, on oppression and extortion. Why? So you can add more upon more. Colossians calls greed idolatry. It's really an interesting statement. Colossians says, put to death whatever belongs to your earthly nature, and in it, the end of it, including greed, which is idolatry. How is greed and covetousness, which is the desire to have more and more and be wealthier, how is that considered idolatry? Because you start worshiping it, it becomes all-consuming. It's all-consuming. The human heart believes the more I have, the better off I will be. When the truth is, the more you have, the more you possess, the less you will think you need God. You can't serve both God and money. You could say covetousness is like a two-sided coin, and it's a deadly coin. On one side, you have what I'd call cold-hearted capitalism. On the other side is hot-headed communism. They both come from the same place, the worship of money. Cold-hearted capitalism will consume you when you think, I need to get more and more and hoard more and more. The problem with cold-hearted capitalism, it denies God's rightful position as owner of the world, and he can do with it as he wishes. We think wealth is a sign God is blessing me, when in fact, wealth is a sign God wants to use you to bless the world. And so the problem with this side is we see money as I'm a better person. Status. I'm more loved by God because I have more money, which is not the case. On this side, you have hot-headed communism. It also comes from covetousness, but it's a jealousy that I don't have what the other guy has. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, his things, or his wife. And then when it really becomes bad, it's I've got contempt for people who have more than me. And ultimately, communism, this hot-hearted communism, is to mistrust that God knows what he's doing. Does God have the right to give talents and riches and ability to people who he wants? Yeah, he's sovereign. Nope, everybody should have equal access. The problem with this is this heart sees money as salvation or the solution to all my problems. Isn't a relationship with God is why we're on this earth? That's why we're here. Not to get things. We're here to know him. We're not here to just hoard riches nor wealth, because both are fleeting. Timothy says, be careful. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. So my question with this first woe, do you know any greedy people? Do you think our culture has greedy people? Are you greedy? That's the first. We took a lot of time on woe one because I have a feeling it kind of is a sin that we look past in our culture. I think we're blinded to different sins. I think back in the Civil War time we were blinded to slavery. It was just kind of inherent in the system. Now we see it. I think woe number one is inherent in the system. We got to be careful. Woe number two. Second woe is found in 11 and 12a. 11 and 12a says, woe to those who rise early in the morning. That's not bad to get up early, right? Oh, well, to run after their drinks, who stay up late at night till they are aflame with wine. They have harps and lyres, say guitars and drums. At their banquets, pipes and timbrels and wine. It's describing a people of unrestrained pleasure seekers. Hearts addicted to the party scene, bar hopping, dance clubs, keg parties, and a continual flowing of beer, scotch, wine, and rum. If you can't go to an event without alcohol, there's something wrong. We live in a culture where alcohol has to be included if it's going to be any kind of event. The issue here, though, isn't as much the drinking of wine or the alcohol. The issue here isn't even the pursuit of fun. The issue is 12b. Look what it says. Because of this running after the drink, they have no regard for the deeds of the Lord, no respect for the work of his hands. When the pursuit of pleasure interferes with your love for God, it's called intoxicated indifference. I don't care. And when you reach that point, it's very dangerous. Whatever it is that causes me to forget God, whether it be drink, drugs, or even the obsessive pursuit of sports, is a major problem because we have been planted by God for a purpose to grow good fruit, not just to wither on the vine getting fat and spoiled and sour. So question, do you think our country has a problem with pleasure? And before you answer, I just have to remind you, it's that time of year again, put it on your calendars, coming to a Florida beach near you. Just remember. Let's go to woe number 3. Woe number 3. 18 and 19. And by the way, I want to read something for you. If you are addicted to woe number 2, it's the one woe he really hammers heavy on. He says, because they wake up early for wine, look at verse 13, my people will go into exile for lack of understanding. Those of high rank will die of hunger, and the common people will be parched of thirst. Therefore, death expands its jaws, opening wide its mouth. What's really fascinating is if you read car accidents that cause death, spousal abuse, murder, robbery, incarceration, way over half of those, the person was drunk while they were doing the action. So let's go to number 4. No, it's number 3. We find in verse 18 and 19, it says, woe to those who draw sin along with cords of deceit and wickedness as with a cart, to those who say, let God hurry. This is sarcastic, verse 19. Let God hurry. Let him hasten his work so we may see it, the plan of the Holy One of Israel. Let it approach, let it come into view so we may know it. In other words, he's saying, you know what? I'm going to keep sinning and I don't care. And come on, God. He doesn't care. Let me see what, he's not doing anything, so why not? That's what that is kind of talking about. So what is this? John Oswalt said, 18 and 19 is describing a heart whose sinning is with a high hand, meaning they are daring God to punish them while they are doing things that aren't out of ignorance or a mistake. They don't just fall into the sin, they're kind of pulling it to themselves, saying, who cares? They have no shame. It's no shame. People don't do that in our culture, do they? I don't know. I haven't seen it too often. I don't think people would go to like parades where they dress in outfits that they would wear in the privacy of their own home. They wouldn't do that in America, would they? Nah, let's keep going. Number 4. This is a strange woe, so you're going to have woe 4, 5, and 6 are going to come quick. It's kind of like the first 3, he gave you the woe, then he gives a little bit of, don't do that, don't do that. This one, he's just going to tell, it's sort of like the bold judgments in Revelation where they start coming faster and faster like pregnancy. And I have a feeling what's happening here is he's saying, when these woes just start happening faster and faster, it might be a sign that judgment is closer and closer than you think. And watch these next three. Verse 20. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. This is willful moral confusion, meaning I know what's right, but I'm going to willfully make it confusing so I don't have to be accountable to that thing I know that's right and wrong. It's willful confusion. They turn good into evil and evil good. I remember when I first read this, I wondered if people in our culture would ever reach this low. Who in their right mind would ever call evil good and good evil? Well, I know one person, the devil. The devil actually came up with the greatest lie of all in the Garden of Eden. We use this all the time. Did God really say, and you can put a blank line, did God really say that adultery was wrong? Did he? I don't remember that. It's called willful moral confusion. Did God really say that fornication was wrong? Did God really say that stealing from others was wrong? Did God really say that bearing false witness? Sorry about that. Is that my thing? Sorry. I'm sorry. Did God really say that you should not interrupt with microphone on? Did God really say that bearing false witness by politicians and leaders in authority was wrong? Oh, he couldn't have. That's politics, right? I lie to people to get votes. Isn't that okay? Did God really say that marriage is between one man and one woman? No. Did God really say that if you're a man dressing up as a woman, it's anathema or something worthy of judgment? I don't remember that. Did he say that? Did God really say it's wrong to worship other gods? No. They're all fine. It's all okay. This is willful moral confusion. I really thought in my younger years that most people are given enough common grace that for the most part they'll be reasonable. When they see evil, they will call it out as evil. When they see good, they'll say it's good. But I'll be honest with you, in the last 5 years, I've been shocked. I've been utterly shocked with how this is almost the truest thing of our culture now. It's crazy. Good is forgotten, cast aside, and evil is being swallowed by people as easily as a minnow in the mouth of a largemouth bass. It's sick. I'm going to present one small example. This still shocks me. One. And I honestly can't believe I saw this in my lifetime. And I know you're going to remember this. And I know as I present it, some of you are going to say, you're being political. I'm not being political. That's the problem too. If people say this is wrong, quit being political. I'm not being political. I'm just telling you what's happening. I just want to show this as an example to show you how easy it is to alter reality by twisting definitions. You won't believe it. 2 years ago, this lady, Ketanji Brown Jackson, was being questioned to take the open position of United States Supreme Court Justice. They were asking her questions. One senator was asking her a very simple question, and it was about an issue that is highly contentious, which is called women's legal rights, because that's a big thing. The question was simple. What is a woman? That's all they asked her. What is a woman? Even though we know she knows the answer. She knows the answer. She refused to answer so she wouldn't be pinned down. And she said, I'm not a biologist. I can't answer that. Everybody knows the answer to that. This isn't a political thing. But here's what she's saying. I can't give an answer because I may be held responsible for my answer. So instead of standing on solid reality, I'd rather be non-committal so I can avoid all repercussions. And that is how evil all across the spectrum becomes normalized. One philosopher said the only thing necessary for the triumph of evils, for good men to do nothing. As long as people stay quiet when definitions are being changed, it'll be okay. As long as wicked actions are affirmed as good, evil will always win. But I don't think that's happening, is it? No, let's go to woe number 5. Woe number 5 is just flat out the scariest one, and it doesn't sound like it, but it's pride. Look at verse 21. Woe to those who are wise in their own eyes and clever in their own sight. There's not much written here, but I think it's because this is the one thing that makes God very combative. This is the one thing that got the devil thrown out of paradise. And when you are proud, God opposes you, meaning he's ready to battle with you when pride is who you are. In the case historically, the people of Israel were quite impressed with themselves. Uzziah was an incredible king. We're going to talk about it next week, but he had an incredible war machine. They were rich. They were peaceful. So they really were saying, we're pretty good here. We got it made. Probably Israel's never as good as they were at the time Isaiah wrote this. And pride snuck in and started staining their country's soul. In fact, in our current system, people in the highest echelons have what's called the progressive thinking. Progressive thinking is this belief that our culture is farther ahead than all the cultures that ever came before us. C.S. Lewis calls this chronological snobbery. We think we're the smartest and the best. And our morals are the highest. And if you don't do our morals, you might be left behind with history. That's arrogant. It's very arrogant. And we also now have a new phenomenon called influencers. An influencer is a person who really believes themselves to be the expert simply because they can make a video on a phone. That's all it takes to be an influencer. Have you heard of this biotech engineer? His name is Brian Johnson, who wants to be perpetually young. So what he does, he gets blood transfusions from his teenage son so he can be perpetually young. He was on a talk show the other day, and he said this. He's in his face. He puts all this stuff on his face so he's like 45, and he thinks he looks super young. He doesn't look that young. I mean, honestly, you don't look that young, Brian. But he thinks he does because his face is all rosy, you know. Wow. Probably put his son's blood and put it on. I don't know. I won't get into that. But here's what he said. We are right now, and he says it like this, we are right now at a moment, the last moment, where things are about to change radically. In this new future, we can't predict what's going to happen. We're living in the zeroth world, and Gen Zero is going to rise up. And they're going to say, we are willing to courageously step into the future. We're open to divorce ourselves from all human norms, all human customs, all human thought. And we're willing to say we are now wide open about everything. We are a blank slate. And we're going to create a new world. Did you know there's nothing new under the sun? That's sheer hubris. And remember, God views pride as an invitation to take the challenge. And when God decides to fight, he never loses. That's all I'm saying. We got to be very careful. I jotted this down before the service. It's funny how teens know how to find anything on Google, but ask them to start a fire at a campsite or change a tire. You'll be surprised. Woe 6. Woe 6 is a culmination of all the other woes rolled into one. Total, reckless abandon and proud of it. Look at verse 22. Woe to those who are heroes at drinking wine, champions at mixing drinks, who acquit the guilty for a bride and deny justice to the innocent. But the idea is that instead of being heroes for being good, they're heroes at drinking. Way to go! You can get drunk. Wow! You can drink a bottle of scotch. Aren't you something? We live in that culture. Well, I'm a connoisseur of scotch. Oh, like nobody ever has been before. Wow, that's great. But he's saying, way to go. Heroes. Heroes at what? Antagonizing the holy God. You're proud of that? Why are we proud of that? People are heroes. Lawyers are heroes if they can get away with lying in the court. Politicians are heroes if they can pay journalists to blatantly lie to the public for you. Cryptocurrency frauds are heroes if they can sucker people out of billions of dollars. Gangs of looters are heroes if they can go from store to store stealing just enough that won't get them thrown into jail. The opioid dealer who wants people strung out to bring up his profits is a hero. And there's this new thing where these guys are giving IVs to hydrate you. Costs thousands of dollars, but they'll hydrate you before you go out to the bar, and you can binge drink without getting a hangover. Congratulations. Can't wait till you go to heaven going, what did you do for a living? I made hundreds of thousands of dollars helping people not have a hangover. Really? Congratulations. But again, these woes are hypothetical. Culture wouldn't do this. 6 woes, 6 ways to test fruit. And the question is, how are we doing? How are you doing? Because James says, if you're a friend of the world, I'm not sure you're a friend of God. It's kind of scary, truthfully. It's hard to preach this, but it's an evaluative tool for you. But Jesus wouldn't be this harsh. But have you ever read John 15, where he says, I am the vine, you're the branches. If a man remains in me and I in him, he will bear much fruit. From apart from me, you can do nothing. That's verse 5. And then verse 6 says, if you do not remain in me, you're like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. And that's exactly what Isaiah says at the rest of this chapter. Look at verse 25 of Isaiah 5. Actually, 24 and 25. Therefore, as tongues of fire lick up straw, and as dry grass sinks down into the flames, so their roots will decay, their flowers blow away like dust, for they've rejected the law of the Lord Almighty, and spurn the word of the Holy One. Therefore the Lord's anger burns against his people, his hand is raised, and he strikes them down. It doesn't have to end like this, though. This is just a song. It doesn't have to end like this. Because Jesus faced God's wrath, faced the fire of God's judgment for you. That's what salvation is all about. And if you respond to him by faith, God no longer will treat you as your sins deserve, and he sees you in the person of his Son on the cross, and he's pleased. But it's by faith. It's your choice. And my thing is, I think as a pastor, my responsibility is to say, look at those 6 woes. Are those true of you? I can remember a couple of those used to be true of me. I wanted to be a hero at drinking. I could pound beer better than the rest of them. And then I remember after, who cares? What's wrong with you? Don't you want to be a noble person made in the image of God? Man, yeah. You can change by faith. Therefore, being justified, made right by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ. That's what we offer.